Hey, there he is. How's it going? I can't hear you. Test. Is it me? Hey, your AV okay?
Yes. You
Oh,
got me?
good. Yeah, gotcha. Oh, the other thing, so I'll get a notification about the recording and um they'll let me edit it and then the website will have recording. So don't say anything that you wouldn't want said in public.
Yeah, good reminder.
I want to support your future presidential run.
Gosh, dude, that has got to be the worst job in the planet.
I just admitted John Barrowman for
Hey, gents.
Oh, you're actually here. I thought we just put your thumbnail for celebrity effect.
Have- Am I being used? Is my likeness being used for advertising?
I didn't know you'd
John,
be on
you
this, man.
have two books behind you. I have all these books behind me. I don't know. You're slacking.
I know.
And you wrote all of them, right?
I wrote all of them. I wrote all the Plato books. I wrote like all the history textbooks that I had 20 years ago. I actually had to write my history textbook when I got a history degree. It was really tricky.
I'm
Well, I'm gonna hit admit all.
going to disappear.
Okay, sounds good. Hello, hello, hello. Just waiting, just clicking the admit button.
I think if you remove the weight room, they all just like automatically come in.
Oh yeah, that would be smart. I don't know how to use Zoom.
Yeah, me neither. Or maybe it just deletes everybody in the weight room. I'm not sure. Try it.
One thing, I don't know how to make a co-host. Seems like there can only be a host. Maybe I don't have some tier of Zoom or something.
Well, I know how to mute and unmute, so I can chime in as needed.
Give one more second for people to show up. Do. Hope everyone brought your tough questions. Got a pretty good crowd here. Hello, hello. Wow. iPhone is joining. Wow, people still showing up. So there will be a recording of this available. But I will not edit out anything incriminating. That's the compromise you get by showing up. Wow, we have a good crew here. So why don't we get started? So this is just a casual conversation, mostly between me and Brian, about trends we've seen in tech hiring, things we've seen be useful in the process of going through highlighting yourself as a technologist in today's environment, whether it be due to layoffs, whether it be due to AI. How exactly do you think about these doing these managing your career and navigating your career in this sort of like insane moment we're in, full of like extreme variance and uncertainty. Either AI is going to be writing all our code, or maybe AI will write some of our code, or there will be no appetite, financial appetite for hiring anybody, or AI is gonna actually cause people to hire more engineers. So it's like massive, massive variance in things that could happen. And what Brian and I are sort of help a lot of people in their careers in different ways. Um, and I'll just introduce myself quickly for those who don't know. So my name is Doug Turnbull. I blog a lot at softwaredoug.com. I do training courses on Maven, especially around search. My focus is on search and search relevance. And these days, a lot of times with AI, that means some kind of RAG thing. Uh, and that's a very popular thing, is trying to get search results to an LLM application to do something with. So that's me. I'm teaching a bunch of courses. I'm sure I'll email discount codes to the folks who join this call. If you're interested in learning how to apply LLMs to improving the quality of search results and doing content enrichment, or just if you happen to use a stack, sort of a traditional Elasticsearch kind of stack, I'm also teaching a course on getting the most out of your Elasticsearch and friends, sort of Elasticsearch, OpenSearch, Solr. So that's me. Brian, do you want to introduce yourself a bit?
Yeah. Well, great to be here. I know Doug probably going back, I think it's probably about 7 years when I first heard of you, maybe met you at a haystack, but know Doug through working in search. I've been in that domain for 8 or 9 years. Prior to that, I spent 8 years in the technical recruiting space and then got into search, working at a managed Elasticsearch, OpenSearch Solr company. And then I started a business called the Search Bar. And there's actually some familiar faces in here. I've talked to some folks in the room. And so what we do at the Search Bar is it's very niche recruiting agency that is only focused on search and AI search roles. So I have an interesting vantage point in the market, very, very much frontline, front row seating to different trends happening, particularly with, I would say, seed to Series B companies, and what some of their hiring needs and trends look like. So we can get into that later, but it's good to meet you all.
Yeah, so that's great. So definitely, if I would highly, actually, Brian's gotten me jobs in the past, so I definitely highly recommend Brian for if you're interested in a really cool job. He's really connected to a lot of really interesting companies, and now I think is an interesting time to be talking to seed to like early startup companies. So one thing I want to just kick us off is maybe what you, Brian. What have you seen in terms of like the impact of AI on the hiring process, like the kinds of roles? I mean, obviously you're focused on search, but I'm curious if there's anything you notice pre ChatGPT. I don't know if you were doing search bar pre ChatGPT, but in general, if there's anything you notice like anecdata about now in the current market of looking for technologists compared to potentially those earlier days, if you have any thoughts on what you on patterns and things that you see between successful candidates and maybe less successful candidates.
Yeah. The other the role that I have that I forgot to mention is I'm an advisor at an organization called Seven CTOs, which is also a very interesting vantage point for me to see what is top of mind for CTOs. There's about 300 or 400 of them in this organization. So it's got like pretty contrasting viewpoints here. I would say the first trend, and this won't be a surprise to anyone, is that it was probably 18 to 24 months ago that I think every CTO was mandated by their board or executive team to figure out what their AI strategy is going to be. And from that, we saw the hype waves start to roll. Let's build RAG systems for potentially no good reason because we just think we need one. And we saw those POCs kind of come and go. So I think the AI strategy has been top of mind. What are we going to build? How are we going to build it? Very common questions. The way I see that playing out now is a lot of these traditional software businesses are starting to retool and replatform for AI workloads. And I'll give a couple examples. Uh, one company, their engineering organization is about 200 people. They laid off 50%, and then they immediately rehired 75% of that headcount for different roles. Um, Another example, a smaller company, they raised a round a few months ago, and instead of layoffs, they invested that capital in a fresh, brand new AI team. And so we helped staff, the head of AI, a staff data engineer, NLP engineer, and then a few ML AI engineers. So they're just, starting from scratch. Those are the types of roles that they're filling. I'll pause there. I can go on with more stories, but I'll pause there, Doug.
Yeah, I think one thing that the implication from a lot of that too, from what I see, and also I want to encourage people to use the chat if you're open to it, or feel free to raise your hand and we can, participate in the discussion if you've seen something. So one thing I've seen an implication of that, and I used to do a lot of consulting. It's interesting. I used to do a lot of consulting in the 2010s for search teams, and now I do consulting for search teams, um, a lot of times RAG teams. In the 2010s, a lot of what I was seeing was maybe a relatively stable team that wants to get 3% more conversion. Maybe they're looking at like an exciting technology. Maybe at the time it was like doing learning to rank or some specific thing like that. Like there was an initiative they thought would get them a big gain, and our job was to help them with that. But you're not like building an application from scratch. Whereas now there's just a tremendous amount of everyone is building something from 0 to 1, and they need it yesterday. They feel the time crunch of that. And I think there's a lot of schedule pressure on people for because of AI things. And I also think if you couple that with the current situation with layoffs, people that like doubles down the stress people feel. People feel they can't push back like maybe they could in the 2010s. They can't easily sort of say that this is unreasonable or whatever. They really have to like keep going, and it really burns people out. Um, and so I've noticed that now is like very much there's an intense amount of pressure to get a product out the door, and a much more probably top-down perspective to doing just development in general of like we have to do this AI thing, we have to get it done. And due to financial reasons or whatever, people fearing for their tech jobs, there's less bottom-up pushback when like, oh, is this a good idea? Which you might have seen in the days of in the 2010s, so to speak. Let's see, I'm just reading the questions here. Tito says, I concur with the observation of the top-down AI strategy mandates following ChatGPT to launch, focus on fast delivery without understanding. Yeah, I think there's a lot of like, we just need to get some AI thing done. And I think everyone's like, you're not getting fired these days for choosing AI. It's sort of like the old saying, you don't get fired for choosing Oracle. Um, Brian, I'm curious, like in general, when given all this and what we've said, when you're bringing candidates to people, is there anything in particular that distinguishes like a successful candidate, a candidate that tends to attract a lot of interest from your customers? I mean, obviously there's skills, right? We all can kind of guess like AI skills, prompt engineering skills, and that kind of thing. But what other sorts, I guess, skills and other things that seem to make candidates attractive to your customer base?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of timeless best practices that are still relevant, um, which would be your ability to communicate your experience effectively. Um, what I typically will recommend, if you've heard of the jobs to be done framework, it's been around for a long time, but it does one of the nice things about that, and I think that relates to, candidates representing themselves, is their ability to talk about the specific task that they did rather than, and this is in contrast to, you know, keyword stuffing in your resume, but just speaking to like, I had direct responsibility for this, and this. Here were the outcomes or the results that benefited the business, the end user, whomever. I still find, and people who've been working for a long time, concise, clear answers with that information is still quite effective, and something I encourage people to do. A couple other thoughts. I see 12 months ago, this is interesting. 12 months ago, technical interviews, it was kind of discouraged and frowned upon if a candidate was using AI in their technical assignment. And now it's like we expect them to, we want them
It's the
to.
opposite.
It's the opposite. Yeah. So the the takeaway there is I'm seeing more companies expecting people to be proficient with those tools in their job. Um, the inverse is not good, which is people that are relying too heavily on that but don't have a good foundation in software engineering, they are immediately rejected. So um, having that solid foundation in kind of core principles of software development, super important. And I think the technical interviews are still sussing, like they're still assessing that for people.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but wielding the AI tools effectively is not going anywhere, and it's probably more important, going to continue to get more
Yeah.
important.
yeah, what I see in general for people is, or in demand, people who are successful these days, in part because of financial pressure, but people who can, AI, I think, puts a lot of pressure on people to wear lots of different hats. So I think, in my opinion, the current way all of this is going to shake out is not necessarily that we will never that AI. I don't think necessarily that even if AI writes 90% of the code, there is a level of judgment needed to go up and down the stack between the details of what the code is doing and the product problem. And if you have an AI assistant that's helping you with a lot of menial tasks, that means that your mental bandwidth can be freed up to think about things that impact the product and the business. And I think this is true of software engineers who need to be thinking about the product of the customers, um, and also different domains within software engineering, machine learning, databases, other things like. And I think it also has, I think it also has to do with product managers. Like product managers, I think increasingly need to be technical, need to be able to do their own analyses, maybe need to build demos using vibe coding. Um, Instead of wireframing, I think we're vibe coding, and eventually, you'll have a more broader team that has some engineering and some project management. But I feel like it's a bit more of a fluid environment than like a product managers are over here doing one thing and software engineers are over here doing a completely different thing. And there's a clean interface. I think it's like everyone has all the context in their head with slightly different emphasis is the new way of thinking about things. So we got a bunch of questions, and Kimberly, you raised your hand. What I might suggest, I'm gonna go down the list here and just like answers people questions. If you want to type your question, that would be great, or I'll get to you after I get through these questions. Let's see. Emol says, I see lots of roles looking for AI experience, but it's unlikely that so many people have execution-based skills in this area. They may have theoretical or projects-based knowledge. How are people able to communicate, convey knowledge in the space without having worked at a company executing AI projects? So like I think you might be asking like how do you convince people that you know something even if your resume doesn't explicitly have like I did this and it resulted in a 3% bump in something? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, basically, it's just like, I would imagine many people have learned about this or they've done their side projects, but you haven't been at a company where you had the title AI engineer or AI product manager. You can be like, I own this at a company. And it seems like that seems at the end of the conversation for many people at hiring companies. So just curious if you've seen successful strategies where you can be like, I actually do know this and I would do it, but you might have to take a risk on me.
I'll add a
Brian,
comment to that real quick, Doug. Yeah.
yeah, sure.
One of the helpful things that I've seen is moving to a startup, whether it's seed or a little bit further along. They are giving people lots of opportunities, and they're AI native. They're committed to these tools, and you will get that experience. And they're a little more open to, hey, I have a bit of a track record in another company. I've been doing this stuff. I've been working on projects and POCs, and I'm seeing more people get those opportunities. At the well-established companies, not as much. And it's harder to get access to those projects, I think, like you said, um, because the structure and it's just different, and it's hard to get access to that. So I've seen a lot of people leave uh, large or enterprise organizations, move to startups, and I mean, they're so fulfilled because they get to work on this stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've seen that as a strategy for junior employees getting out of college. Seed stage, I mean, you might not get you're not gonna get the big company pay and all that. But I do think there's a lot of, if you are focused on like, I just want to make sure I get that, like, I did AI at X company, an early stage startup is a great place to get your foot in the door, I think.
And I
And
think
there's a ton of them.
the the job security question topic is interesting as well here. Um, these startups are a lot of them are pretty well funded where they'll have, and I don't work with startups that don't have 2 years of runway, because I just don't want to deal with uncertainty and the reputation that that gives my business. So um, I think I see a little more job security in those like well-funded startups that have a couple years of runway than at more established companies that you're kind of wondering if a riff is around the corner. So that's also an interesting observation in the last year or so I've seen.
Yeah. So I'll just say, I'm so glad we got so many questions. Please use the plus emoji to react to anything you definitely want an answer to. So I kind of use that to sort through things. Or the finger one was used to. So question from Sarah Crosby, where do you see designers in this scenario? That's really interesting. I don't necessarily, I'm not like super involved in the designer space. Brian, do you tend to recruit? Do you tend to see a lot of search UX or designers kind of that you place into different companies?
I don't. And my personal opinion is I think UX is so underutilized in the search experience, and I wish I think you could solve a lot of problems with search with good UX. um, I don't get as many design positions.
Yeah, I mean, I do see a lot of newish AI tools that are like people trying to do design with AI, but everything about design is such a visual thing. You really need a tight feedback loop where you're dragging and moving things around. Obviously, for quickly building visual assets and things, there's like, you can generate that now pretty easily with AI. But yeah, I don't have a great answer for that. Um, let's see. How should we, Quasi-Sad says, how should we generally adopt our skills to be, oh, Candace, do you want to jump in?
Yes, sir. I think you might have just skipped my question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Where are you, Candace?
I could say it out loud real quick.
Oh yeah, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. So I was about to say, given the market and the ongoing layoffs, do you think people should pivot their career solely to AI? And if not, how should they incorporate AI in their tech stack? So I know when AI was becoming more and more prominent, especially for people who've been engineering for a while, the consensus is, should we just pivot to this, right? There's a lot more jobs coming up, like, and if not, then how do we incorporate that in our tech stack, right? Like whether you're front end, back end, or full stack, it just feels like sometimes we're being moved in like different directions with trying to keep up with the trend. So just wondering, is this a good time to pivot to AI completely? And if not, what can we do to incorporate it into our tech stack to keep up with the current trends?
Yeah, so yes, it could be a good time. I think like one way to think about it is like thinking of AI or using an AI in the same way we think about like writing or maybe programming. It's just there's AI in the sense of as a productivity tool. And without a doubt, I think like all of us should be involved in that. I think that's just part of like, we should live and breathe that the same way we might have had to write a lot or do public speaking or write code or anything. I think that's just going to be like everything. And it could be anything from, as software engineers, like there's all the like, there's Cursor and all those tools. And I think that space is rapidly evolving. Um, and having some familiarity with that space, I think is really important. Like Brian said, like he's seeing people, an expectation people are using those tools. In terms of like incorporating it into your like actual tech stack, um, everyone's maybe using AI for AI's sake right now. That's going to be extremely problems specific. I think anything that involves natural language is like a slam dunk for some kind of LLM involvement where it used to be the case, like for me in search, it used to always be the case that like if you wanted to have like a query understanding kind of project, you would, that you'd be hiring some NLP PhDs and spending 6 months to a year to do some things. And now it's like, let me hack around with some LLMs and see if I can build some interesting query classifiers for search. So I think that's a trickier thing, and that's actually where like a lot of the product innovation is. But I think in terms of productivity, I think it's almost like an expectation that that this is like just stuff we live and breathe. Brian, do you have any thoughts?
My thought about the question, Candace, is what do you mean by pivot? Because I think Doug's answer maybe speaks more to like incorporation. Did you have something like what did you mean by pivot?
Meaning that should I just pretty much shift my tech stack to learning LLMs and AI, for the sake of getting a position?
Okay.
And
Yeah, I
if
think
and if not, if making a full pivot isn't necessarily a good thing to do, then if a software engineer wanted to involve it in their tech stack, I guess how would they do it? And I guess maybe the first thing would be like starting to understand LLMs, maybe building something with it. So you're not doing like a full pivot, but you at least have some programming knowledge of it, as well as using it as well.
gotcha. Yeah, I think that's wise. That's my 2 cents on it. I think it's wise to start to saturate yourself in how LLMs work and how to incorporate those types of tools into what you're currently doing. That's my 2 cents.
I think too, it's a great if your company has any kind of hackathon, it's a great time to say, look at this thing I did over here that has an AI thing. I think that's good for your career right now.
I think
Um, yeah, sure. I think the next question I see the most votes. So, how should we generally adopt our skills to be impactful in the era of AI? I personally think there are two types of people that will be in demand: senior experienced people that know how to architect solutions or help when AI gets stuck, multi-skill engineer that is good at using AI coding tools to build faster. I think that's a I think that's sort of like I struggle with the same dichotomy. I definitely think the second is true. Like there's gonna be the generalist thing is like multi-skill engineer. And then the senior experienced people that know how to architect when AI like yes, definitely. I mean, there are times when AI just isn't working well right now. Maybe that'll change. Um, and there are specific programming paradigms. I read a good blog article that's like there are certain programming languages like Python or something that are just like less finicky and easier for an AI to code it. And then there are, if you're in Rust or something, or some really low level thing, or something on the long tail of stuff an AI has never seen before, that's where your specific skills are going to come into play. I think the only thing I would say is I don't think these are mutually exclusive. I think it's more of a spectrum, and there's like people may have heard of the inverted T model of skills where you have a good base of generalist skill, and I think that's that number two. And there's people are spiky in different areas where they could code without an AI if they had to, or they have really good judgment on what should be coming out of the AI for their domain. Um, where even a tiny percentage of getting something wrong is really bad. So the security, really intense performance issues, where like precision is really important and you really need to have a lot of care. But even in like if you're vibe coding a tool for you know, a web app for a photo sharing web app, like that spikiness could be more about like the domain of what do I like, maybe creating a photo sharing web app for a specific group of people, a specific audience in mind, or specific, like, I don't know, phone or device. You have to know what those people want, and that's a bit of spikiness too. So I think it's like it's a bit amorphous, but I think that people should both be okay uh, being broad generalists. But I also think it's a good idea for certain areas to have kind of like there's this notion of deliberate practice where you work on that skill, often without AI, just to get really good at that skill. And I still think that's, for me, at least at a minimum, it's enjoyable. But I still think like there is a level of, I mean, using AI to do this deliberate practice, not using AI, but I think there's a level of like, I really just want to focus on this skill or this domain. And right now, if you were the person who said, I do AI enabled X, where the X is your deep dive focus, and AI enabled blah is the I'm a generalist that can use cursor. I think right now that's to me that's like a great way of standing out either as a person or a honestly product. So I don't know, Brian, if you have thoughts.
No, that's good. I was reading all the great questions in the chat while you were talking. So many good questions in here.
Sounds good.
Yeah, let's keep going.
And if we don't get to all this stuff, like, you know, I can talk to Brian, I can twist his arm and we could have maybe a bit of office hours for
Yeah.
career if we want to. Um, Given the schedule pressure, well, let me make sure I'm doing this fairly based on votes. Sorry. Uh, we talked about designers. Um, so Bogdan says, hello, thank you for the call. What's the minimum expectation from a search engineer to be involved with MLAI? Having hands-on fine-tuning, training, building classifier, quantizing. So really quickly on that question, I do think search engineer can mean lots of things. It could mean you're focused on infrastructure. It could mean you're general app developer. It could mean that you're more of a modeling person. And I think that's that spiky part of the T that you choose to focus on. Um, I think if you are in the ML engineer side, ML relevance engineer, a modeling engineer side, I would 100% be learning about this stuff. If you're a bit on the infrastructure side or you're not, you know, it's up to you. It's more of, is it interesting to you? But I think like to the earlier point, having that solid foundation of being able to immerse yourself in AI for productivity, it's just something everyone should do. I don't know what you see, if you see anything specific, Brian.
Absolutely. I would say I've started to use this term, the modern search engineer, that kind of captures the profile or like domain versatility of that role. So the modern search engineer is it's the most in-demand skill or like job that I see these days from companies. And it's somebody that has a blend of backend, machine learning, and relevance. Like that is the skill set that I see most commonly with companies. Um, and I will also say that compared to 12 months ago, I'm seeing like 2 to 3x the amount of roles in AI search right now. Like there's actually a lot of positions open that are that type of blend of experience.
Yeah. And to answer your other question, I probably put just training a model, building a classifier as like basic, more like stuff everybody does, quantizing, and then fine tuning is the last thing because it seems like fine tuning is such a minefield with, especially with LLMs. Maybe not so much embeddings. Let's see. How do you think the role of growth product manager evolves with the adoption of AI. Growth PM are less focused on building specific AI features and more on getting users to adopt features built by core feature teams. That's a great question. So growth hacking is something that really fascinates me. I don't know much about it, but I do know like there's this whole skill of like basically like growth oriented how are we getting people in our funnel to like maybe it's like hacking some SEO stuff or doing really good email marketing and like really getting people to adopt our stuff. How is the adoption of AI going to change that? Honestly, like I'm not sure focus on building specific AI features and products. I'm not I think like obviously a lot of this is dear to my heart because there's a lot of information retrieval and search and recommendations and all that stuff. And I think a lot of that is there's a lot of AI and large language models involved in trying to improve the quality of those sorts of things. Some of it's like not new, a lot of it's been around for a while. But I think, yeah, absolutely. I know in recommender systems, there's like transformers have done a lot of great work. In terms of like, I, yeah, so I think like that's basically, I think that more or less answers your question. I don't know if you see this in if this sort of specific skill set in your recruiting, Brian.
Not so much. I mean, I have some experience on the topic, having worked my entire career in sales and the CRO role in a SaaS company. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, I'm not. I'm definitely not recruiting for those types of roles. There's a lot of questions in here about product management. I feel like we're in the middle of a trend, and I don't yet see the patterns, or like understand what exactly is happening. I've seen probably the most layoffs with that role. And more recently, like I'm talking in the last couple of weeks, there's surprisingly an influx of open positions posted for AI PMs. So I could only speculate that, this is part of the restructuring of laying off some people and kind of that retooling, replatforming for AI workloads, and then, looking for PMs that have managed those types of products. It's an interesting one.
yeah. Like I said, I think there's a lot of I've seen PMs really range like a great PM can make or break a team. Um, I've seen PMs that are amazing communicators that are great advocates for the team and really understand the team's technical domains. I would say PMs that are kind of sometimes more in I sort of like a bit more of a project manager than a product manager. Maybe doing a bit more administrative stuff or trying to like, connect, maybe don't fully understand the domain. I think there's a big range of expertise there in the project management. And so I tend to see the on the left hand, the people who have high ownership, really understand the domain and may be somewhat technical tend to thrive. Like at a minimum, run a SQL query to use data. That's the other thing, using data to build your case. Like I think like and not having to go out to an engineer or data scientist do that for you is just crucial. Um, uh, and I think even more so, the product manager increasingly who can vibe code like their idea quickly. Even I don't think we're at a place where we want to necessarily, unless maybe you're a very early stage startup where we're shipping that to production. But like as a means of like having a conversation about an idea, like that side is, I think, really valuable. And maybe like is the new AI product manager. Uh, on the other end of the spectrum, I do think there's a lot of sort of like bureaucracy and things that product managers tend to do. And I think sometimes companies can value that less and start to see that as like, oh, okay, have fewer folks in this role and try to get the people who can get everything in their head in this. And sort of related to that is I see these, I don't know, it seems like more and more there's, like I said before, there's these startups that have like 10 people and they're doing amazing. And part of that is because like they've asked their people to fit the entire context into their brain.
And now I'm aware I want to keep sharing my screen, but this is a public course, so I'm there's too much personal information of what I want to share. I one of the core pillars of my business is this foundation assessment that I designed, and it visualizes your experience across the search architecture and the like interdisciplinary roles for a position or for like what work you've done. And so for the most common pattern or like shape that I see for the PM is it's like what you would expect for product management, but it also indexes heavily on data science. So you kind of alluded to that, Doug, but I see it on so my clients take the assessment as well for the open position, and every single one of them, the shape of that PM role is like heavy on PM, heavy on data science.
Yeah, and Tito made a really good point about domain expertise, which is, I think that's also really important, is another really good pattern of a PM is a PM that's almost like an entrepreneur in their business and domain, and they're sort of like they're advocating for product direction with a business use case because they understand a domain and they know the market and they know the customers, so they know, I think this should be the way we go because of X data. And I think the pressure on PMs is like, pull that data, show me results, like prove that that domain expertise in that direction is the right one. And I think right now we're in a place of, unfortunately, sometimes like how I don't know, in the US, college football coaches have pressure to like have a winning team the first season or the first two seasons. I think that it gets to a lot of PM pressure and sometimes, unfortunately, layoffs. So we're about out of time. I hope folks enjoyed this. We might think about doing another sort of like sort of open office hours for folks who have career questions. But I really appreciate this, and feel free to reach out. Like the conversation can keep going. Feel free to reach out to me or Brian on LinkedIn. I'm at softwaredoug.com. And is it thesearchbar.com, Brian?
.ai.
Thesearchbar.ai. Okay. And I definitely recommend if you're interested in pursuing a role, definitely check out Brian's assessment. It's really cool. Cool. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.